Welcome everyone to another video on the channel. If you didn't see my last video on the Dorney sprint triathlon that I took part in over the weekend, then do check that out. My first event in 18 months, link somewhere up there. But this video is the follow-up to that, and what I'm aiming to do is provide you with a little bit of a race report, a bit of analysis in between around my performance. So I think everyone is always keen to know how you got on in a race, you know, what your times were, where were your placings in your age group categories, those kind of things. And if I'm honest, I think going into this race was an opportunity to really see how I performed against my previous performances in this race. And that's the first and foremost thing that I always look to. Yes, it's great to see how you stack up in the field, but it gives you a real good understanding of your current condition. I think in hindsight, with the terrible conditions there were on Saturday, it was always going to be hard to make a true comparison, but we will have a go and make a stab at that. The race had the Oxford and Cambridge young whippets in as well racing. I think they were racing each other, I suppose, but a big turnout from them. It was interesting to watch some of those and how quick some of those went. But those guys were first off in the race. I think they got those off, and then I was next up, so I was on the second row, just based myself there based on my swim time and that kind of thing. So let's take this bit by bit. So on the swim, the water was flipping cold. The water was actually 12 degrees. Now, I'd mentioned in my previous video that I was pretty apprehensive about the water, not necessarily about the actual swimming of it, but it was more about the temperature and how I would cope with that, considering I haven't really done any open water swimming full stop this year. And the water and the temperature, you know, it's still pretty cold. So, you know, I wanted to see whether they would allow us to acclimatise to the water, and as it was a socially distanced swim, there were questions around that. The answer to that was quick and short: no, they didn't. It was basically, off you go, swim. And that for me was tough, because it took me probably 100 meters or so into that swim before I actually could overcome that feeling and not, you know, stop yourself going into any shock. When that sort of period of passed, I think I swam relatively well. I think the distance, it turned out something like 460 meters, and I think the time was 7. I'll put it on screen now. So there you go. In my age group, that was the 4th fastest swim, but nowhere near what I could swim it, really. So out of the swim, we headed into transition 1, and that wasn't too bad. It was a bit of a struggle getting out of my wetsuit with cold hands, but there was nothing compared to what was to come later on. It was tough getting my shoes on, particularly with freezing cold feet. That was quite tough work. I was in and out in 2 minutes 15, which is pretty slow, to be honest. You know, when you consider previous races, I think I did that 45 seconds quicker in 2019. The transition, I think, was 8th fastest in the age group. So we were then out and onto the bike, and basically it was 4 laps of the lake. So you headed down, it wasn't too bad, but when you turned and headed back, that was when you felt the full force of the wind. You know, it was a struggle at the time to keep the bike on the actual path, and it was more of a crosswind really, and you had to lean into the wind to really stay on that path, and a lot of athletes were struggling with that. And I suppose running deep section wheels where it catches the wind, you really notice it. I think being in a tucked position certainly helped, because you could put some weight down on the front of the wheel, but the wind really made that bike split tough. I wasn't too happy with my bike split, but when you look at this and you compare it to previous years, there is a big glaring positive that I can take from that. So in 2019, I wasn't running power on my bike, but finished that split in 39.27. On Saturday, I did this in 39.40. Slower, yes, But when you consider the conditions with the wind, the rain, I know that, actually my effort and leg would have been certainly a lot faster. So I know that I'm producing more power on the bike. I'm cycling better than 2 years ago. I think my bike log gave me 8th fastest in the age group, and I was about 4 minutes down on the quickest in my age group. So overall, I know that my bike performance is certainly has improved over the last couple of years. We then came back into transition 2 after those 4 laps, and this is when I really struggled. A few expletives certainly left my mouth, I can tell you that now, but I could not feel my hands nor my feet. Now, trying to change out of your shoes and into trainers was nigh on impossible. I think I was running elastic laces, all those things, but getting my feet in and out and trying to tie anything or pull those laces tight, it took me ages. I mean, I lost loads of time in transition. I think looking at my times, I gave away 2 places in my age group. So I think it was a 2:38 transition compared to 2019, when I think I did it in 1 minute 10 seconds. So it just shows you how cold I was and how long I actually took. So eventually I did manage to get out of transition 2 and onto the run, and I went up pretty hard because I wanted to try and get some warmth and feeling back in my body. I settled into, I think, a 4:20 kilometer pace and felt quite comfortable. One thing I do know is that my muscles really struggle to fire and work big time when I'm cold, and I just could not feel my feet until at least 3.5 kilometers or so into the race, or to the run. The run wasn't anything special in that race, and we hit the headwind coming back in towards home, and I think I came in at around 21:37. Now, what is encouraging is that I've been wondering what kind of 5k form I'm in, considering that I haven't run a 5k or done a time trial like that for some time. So, that had been at the back of my mind to know kind of where I am with that. But if you consider I was freezing cold, I couldn't feel my hands, my feet, I might have mentioned that once or twice. And that was at the back end of a triathlon. I'll take that. I know that probably without all of that in my legs and being warm, I'm probably somewhere around the 20-minute mark for a 5k currently. And that run was still quicker than my 2019 time of 21:55. So even in those conditions and the way I felt, I can certainly take something away from the run. So that gave me an overall time of 1 hour, 14 minutes and 28 seconds, which isn't that quick really at all for a sprint. I mean, times were generally slower, as you can imagine, for everyone on the day. But in 2019, I hit 1:11 now. 1:11:38, I think it was. And in comparison, that's just under 3 minutes quicker. When you consider the conditions, the slow transitions, you have to look at all of that and think, you know what, on a better day, I certainly would have probably PB'd that course, no doubt. Anyway, the most important thing is we're back racing. I'm happy I did it. It's great to be racing again, and I can't wait for the next one. I'm looking to see if I can get in another race before the Outlaw Half. I'm particularly at sort of an Olympic distance around the end of May, beginning of June. So if you know any that's sort of close-ish, I don't mind travelling an hour and a half outside London or so. Do drop me some comments, let me know, because it would be good to check those out, because it would be nice to get one in before going into the Outlaw Half in June. So stay tuned to the channel, because this Thursday I do have another video coming out, and that is going to be looking at my swim training currently and what I'm doing. So look out for that, and I will see you